Hi, I hope you're doing really well today. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to do that. How to play some very simple chord progressions using 2 chords, and then how to play a solo over it. But mainly it's a chord lesson. So let's go straight into the first one. This is E major 7 to A major 7. And let's take a look at these chord diagrams. This is the first one. Okay, that takes a little bit of explanation. You may be used to these diagrams, which are the fretboard diagrams. Now, the orientation of chord diagrams are slightly different. It's more vertical. And you have the string names on the top, E, A, D, G from left to right. You have the chord name above, so this one, E, M, A, J 7 is E major 7. The square is the root, and those black blobs are where you put your fingers, and the finger number is inside. It's absolutely crucial to pay attention to the fret number, okay? So this one here, look, we've got an open E. I'll talk about technique in a minute, but we've got open E. Then we have, on the 6th fret, we have the first finger placed there. It does tell you the interval below as well, okay? It's a major 3rd. And then you've got your 3rd or little finger on the 8th fret of the G string. So all the blobs line up directly. So you have to just get used to those diagrams a bit. Once you do, you'll get it. Just a quick word on technique. So we're using thumb, index and middle fingers. Thumb is playing the open. I'm very much resting my wrist on the bass at the top here, just so that my fingers just sort of plonk down nice and easy. I've got the index taking care of the D string, the middle taking care of the G, and it's all free strokes, which where you pluck and come away from the string. You can play all together, 2 at a time. You can separate anything out. Throughout this whole lesson, I'll do the same rhythm, this one. I'm using my little finger there. You can use your 3rd if you want. And all the chords in this lesson will be like that. An open string and then just 2 other notes. So here's the A major 7. I'm doing what's called a bar here. It's where you get one finger and you use it to press down on more than one string. I remember when I was learning to do that, it was really difficult. So if you want to, you can use your 1st and 2nd instead. Just try to get that down. So here's how the lesson is going to go. We've got 2 chords that form a chord progression when played together. So we'll work out how to play those. And then I've got a pre-recorded version where I'm going to show you what scale it comes from. And that's where you can really get into some fun with this. So here's the chord progression together. Just slow it right down. And this is the rhythm I'm choosing. I'm going thumb, index, middle. Thumb, index, middle, thumb, index, middle, thumb, index. And remember, each digit is covering a different string. E, D, and G for the thumb, index, and middle, respectively. That's the rhythm. So after 2 goes around that, we move to the A. Now you need to stop the open string from ringing. Just now, I just used the bottom of my hand to touch the E string and it stopped it. Or you can use fingers that you're not using for fretting on the fretting hand to do the same thing, to stop the string. See there? That stops it. This is the kind of thing you've got to zero in on this. So at the end of that A major 7 chord, there's that string ringing. I have to stop it. And and just using your second and third will help there. Before you try and stitch them together, just learn each individual chord in the first place. You know, there's my E major 7. For bonus points, it's really nice to be able to work out what the intervals are. There's an E on the 7th fret A string. That tells us that's a major 3rd, and that's a major 7th, hence the name, major 7th chord. Then you've got the A major 7, and that's the major 7, and that's the major 3rd. Very little movement between the two chords. Just learn them individually. Whatever rhythm you like, doesn't have to be this one. Then you can do what I've done here, which is I've recorded this into Logic, and then looped it, and I've got a little drum loop over it. Or you can have a looper pedal and just record the progression and then play something over the top like this. That's where I think you get the most benefit from this, is when you make music from it. So the chord progression fits to a set of notes, a scale. Okay, so this is E major. And what I'll do is I'll give you the PDF that has the individual chords that fit together, and then I'll also give you just one octave scale. Now what I was doing there was playing in some different positions and trying to make a solo up. So look, you've got E major. Okay, and that is where these two chords have come from, and that's why it fits to them. So you can literally just get your looper, or do what I did and record into your digital audio workstation and just play a scale up and down, and it will work. But what you want to do really is to make more music with it. So play the scale and just come up with some different rhythms and leave space. Different registers. That just means not in that one octave, somewhere else. Pentatonic works, so E major pentatonic will always sound good. Repetition. Holding on to notes, okay? Let's do the same thing, but now move on to another example. So now we have an A minor chord. We're going A minor to E minor here. Here's an A minor. Now all the chord shapes I'm going to give you are shapes like that, second and first finger, or maybe a first and third here. Nothing too taxing. Okay, that's why I would class these as easy chords. I do have other chord lessons. I'll put a link here. So here's the A, open A. Then you've got the second finger on the 10th fret and the first finger on the 9th fret. When you're playing chords, you kind of need to really curl your fingers and play on the very fingertip, so that you don't accidentally flatten out your fingers and then accidentally mute a string. So right on those fingertips, you can see that there. That's quite a good angle actually. I'll play just to get the thumb index middle thing going as well. Try to relax as much as you can. You don't have to press down very hard. Thumbs at the back of the neck to press against it to get the pressure. Now this is a little bit of a stretch, but since we're near the 12th fret, it's not actually too bad. We're going to an E minor here. So A minor, E minor, and they work very well together as well. So it's that thing again of just really learning the shape first. So we have an A, and just so you know, that is the flat third. You really need to know your notes and your scales. There's an A there, 7th fret, D string. If I were to play an A natural minor scale, I'll show you that shape in 1 minute. That third note is the flat third. And that defines it as a minor chord and it makes it sound minor. Whereas that note there on the 9th fret is a 5th, and chords and harmony is all about these intervals. It's that thing again of stopping the A ringing. Now we have the 5th and the minor third, the flat third. I sometimes use my little finger just here, just to rest. So I've got a rest point here and here, and that just, I find it steadies everything a lot when I'm playing chords, which I don't do very often. I just do it, I do it a lot in practice, and I do it a lot with loops just to, you know, create and to compose. I don't do it in bands very often, but you know, you can. The transition from one chord to another is always the tricky part, so you just slow it down. And you might just do something like this. Just focus on the change itself. You know, you could even go. Even there's quite a lot going on. I'm muting and then moving, muting with this. So many different ways of muting. I'm sure you'll find the way that you prefer. Let's listen to what that sounds like on the backing track now. You heard me at the end emphasizing the scale, the key that this comes from, which is A natural minor. Okay, those two chords are found within that scale, and just don't forget that a chord is just 3 or more notes played together from a scale. You know, usually the 1st, 3rd and 5th, that's how you build a very basic one. When you play 2 notes, that's a double stop on bass. A chord, you need 1 more note. Okay, so you can learn the scale and just get any notes, you know, from that scale, and you will have different chord voicings. That's what that one's called. So here is your 1 octave natural minor scale. Your pentatonic from that is A minor pentatonic. Your blues scale. So that will fit really brilliantly over this. Let's move on to the next one. I think this one's my favourite. We've got 2 new chords here, very easy to play. We've got A and we've got E minor 7. And this comes from A Mixolydian, and now we start to get a bit crazier here in terms of the names anyway, but it's the same principle, a set of notes that sounds good. But let's look at the chord. So we have A. We've seen this shape before actually when we used the A minor. But now that's just the root, and that's a major 3rd, and then we've just got the root again, so it's not very exciting. That's why it's different to that, because these notes aren't a root and a major 3rd, okay? But this funny thing I'm doing with my thumb over the top, you know, completely wrong bass technique. You can do that with chords if you fancy, you know, muting that string there, you can do that. Then I'm going to the E minor 7. You know, once again, just really pay attention to the fret numbers on the fretboard diagrams. This is fret 7, fret 6 with fingers 2 and 1. And then when you go to the E minor 7, you've got frets 5 and 7 on D and G. Use your 3rd or little finger. I like using the little, it lessens the stretch and the bend. So A, E minor 7. Come up with different ways of going from one to the other. You can reverse them. Do you remember when we had A minor to E minor? You could borrow this E minor 7 chord for that. Sounds really good, but let's stick to this. So there's a shift that's happening to get from there to there. Now I'm practicing in real time here. You're seeing the kind of thing I would do in a practice session, just repeating a hard section and looping it. And just trying to be honest with myself and figure out what's the pain point here. For me, it's that. It's the A spilling into the E. Not stopping the A is a problem. How would I do this? I think I would settle on that. I would move my first and little fingers to the required notes of the E minor 7 chord. I would then have a second and third finger free, and I would use those to touch and stop the A. And I would just practice that loads until it feels normal and natural. You know, even doing that. And with the plucking hand, it's the same thing. Thumb, index, middle. I might do all kinds of different permutations, try and get that coordinated with this. Now, as I said, those two chords come from a Mixolydian mode, which is this. Rather than getting too confused with modes and what they are, just think of it as just another scale. And we know a major scale and a natural minor scale, or at least you should. Those are two to learn for sure, okay? And if you understand a major scale, this one is the same. It's just a flattened seventh. Instead of the major seventh, you have a flat 7. This is just a shortcut to learning that Mixolydian mode. If you know a major scale, you know a Mixolydian, provided you remember to make that 7th note go down a fret. It has a wonderfully calming sound to it, like this. It's very helpful to understand as a musician that these different scales that we have can create different chords which put together give you these different chord progressions and harmonies, and ultimately they all have different moods and vibes, don't they? That one, yeah, just very, it sounds like a Ibiza kind of sunset type vibe, that. And you know, composers often understand this and they will use certain chords to do that. So whereas there are only 2 chords in any of these progressions, it's just to keep the lesson simple. You may find you want something else. So I remember when I was writing this one, that one, I wanted it to go somewhere else, and I would probably do something like this. I like that F and the C. But those aren't easy chords, so I can't do it for this lesson. But if you do feel like you want this to go somewhere else, then study harmony. All those 4 chords came from the one key, which was... I'll put a lesson right here that explains that in arpeggios, and you can play that in chords. If you understand that, then you really can compose. Back to this one. That's the scale. It's your A mixolydian, and you can play A major pentatonic as well. But for now, record your loop however you do it, with a pedal or a computer, and just play an octave up and down. And then really, if you want to get into soloing and making up melodies, it's about cutting back and leaving space and phrasing, learning how to phrase. Last chord progression, we've got a very familiar shape. We've seen this before. We've got fingers 2 and 1, this time on the 2nd and 1st frets of the D and the G strings, and we've got an E. That is the chord, is an E. Then you just go 2 frets higher and you do the same thing, including the open E string. Now really what I wanted here was an E chord to an F sharp. That's not an easy chord though. So what I did, well, you know, this is E here. That's F sharp. Is just play the same shape and just put an E in the bass. That's what that slash chord means. We have an F sharp chord, but the E is in the bass. So that's what the slash means on the right, is whatever's in the bass. And it gives us a relatively easy chord progression. I'm going same rhythm again. Don't worry if you get a little bit of that noise. That's okay. If you come completely off the strings to get from there to there, you will get a little bit of that noise. So sometimes it's easier just to come off, shift up a bit. I mean, you can come off and shift quite cleanly. That's what I mean about zeroing in on bits that bother you or bits that you want to improve on. Now this comes from another mode, an E Lydian mode. And that's another one that looks exactly like the major scale, except the 4th note this time is the one that's different. So instead of a perfect 4th, you sharpen it, and that is the sound of your Lydian mode. At times in that demo I was just playing a scale up and down, and that doesn't really sound very musical, but it does serve the purpose of showing the link between the overall scale or mode and the chords. It fits like a jigsaw puzzle. If you played any of the other modes like E major or E natural minor or E mixolydian to this, it just wouldn't work. It's the wrong notes. So there you have it, 8 really simple chords that go together to make 4 chord progressions. Do download the PDF below. If you enjoyed that lesson, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you want any more chord ones like this, where I give you some easy chords and, you know, make them into a chord progression, then do let me know down below. It's really useful if you tell me that you like a certain lesson and I can make more of them. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.